I still remember the day Kofi came to our village. He was a humble man, quiet and hard-working. No one knew much about him, but he had a way of blending in. He always said he was just a simple fisherman looking for a new start. At first, he kept to himself, but over time, he started to gain respect. He worked harder than anyone else, always bringing in the biggest catches from the river. Some said he had a special connection to the water, that it listened to him. Soon he became wealthy. His little hut turned into a fine house, and people began to whisper about his sudden rise. But no one asked too many questions because Kofi was generous. He helped the sick, gave food to the hungry, and never acted proud. One day, Kofi announced he was getting married. The whole village came to celebrate. His bride was beautiful, but there was something otherworldly about her. Her eyes seemed too deep, her voice too smooth, like the river at night. People whispered again, this time saying she was not just a woman, but a goddess. They said she was Mamle, the spirit of the river. Kofi's life only got better after the wedding. His wealth grew. His house became the biggest in the village. People came from far away to seek his advice. But then everything changed. About a year later, Kofi brought another woman to the village. Her name was Abena, and she was as stunning as the first wife. But unlike Mamle, Abena had a fiery energy, like she carried the sun inside her. Kofi said she was his second wife. People were shocked. It was not uncommon for men to have more than one wife, but to marry another woman while still being married to a goddess. It felt like tempting fate. Mamle's reaction was calm at first. She said nothing, only watched as Abena settled into Kofi's house. But soon, strange things began to happen. The river, which had always been kind to Kofi, grew angry. Fishermen returned with empty nets, and sometimes they didn't return at all. Crops near the water withered. The air felt heavy, like a storm was coming. One night, I was outside fixing my fishing net when I heard the screaming. It came from Kofi's house. I ran there with others, and what we saw still haunts me. Mamle stood in the yard, her eyes glowing like the moon. She was not alone. The river had come with her. Water poured out of her feet, flooding the ground around her. Kofi was on his knees, begging, but Mamle didn't look at him. She was staring at Abena, who stood frozen in fear. Mamle spoke, her voice echoing like thunder. "Kofi, you swore to me by the river. You promised loyalty, yet you betrayed me for her." She pointed at Abena, and the water surged forward, swallowing her whole. Abena screamed, but it was over in seconds. She was gone. Kofi cried and begged for forgiveness, but Mamle only shook her head. "The river gives and the river takes," she said. Then the water rose again. This time it took Kofi. He disappeared beneath the waves, his cries fading into the night. When the water receded, Mamle was gone too. The next day, Kofi's house was empty. No one dared to enter it. The village was quiet for weeks. The river calmed down, but no one ever fished there again. We all knew it belonged to Mamle. And as for Kofi and Abena, their names became a warning, a story we tell to remind ourselves. Never betray the ones who bless you, especially if they're not of this world.